Welcome back to Inside City Hall. The crowded field of Democratic candidates for mayor are all making their final pitches to voters ahead of primary day next week. And remember, we're in the early voting period, so people are voting every day. Meanwhile, Mayor Adams is skipping the June primary and instead running as an independent candidate in the general election in November. My next guest knows what it takes to emerge from a pack in the home stretch. This is former Mayor Bill de Blasio, who pulled that off in 2013. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Thank you, Errol. It feels like it should be Monday night.
Yeah, really. Let's catch everybody up. What are you doing these days?
I'm doing a little bit of everything. I've been teaching at several different universities on fellowships, speeches in various parts of the world, a little bit of travel in there. Obviously been happy to be on different TV programs talking about the news, doing some consulting, a little everything.
Okay, you're taking clients?
You know, we'll see.
Okay.
Depends on the situation.
Very good.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, you have not yet endorsed a candidate in the race for mayor.
Correct.
You're free to do so now?
No, sir.
Okay.
But thank you for the opportunity. Very generous.
I assume most, if not all, of the candidates have reached out to you, or many of them.
A number of conversations.
And what are you waiting for the last 100 hours or something? Or
well, I'm not going to endorse. I mean, you know, lightning might strike, but right now I have no intention of endorsing. I don't think it would be productive. I think the important thing for me to do is, obviously, I am watching. This thing is not day by day anymore. It's hour by hour, the way it's evolving. And for anyone who thought we were going to have a boring primary, it ain't boring anymore. This is really tightened up. So I'm watching, and I'll make my own decisions by election day, but I'm also going to be commenting on what I see, because I hope it's somewhat helpful to voters as they're making their decisions.
Well, what do you see? What is this race about?
I think it's about affordability. I think some wanted to make it about crime and public safety. I'm not saying those aren't real issues, but clearly, thank God, there's been real improvement. You know, with every year since the pandemic, we've seen constant improvement. We're really largely back to where we were, thank God, and I'm proud of this. We had crime go down 6 years in a row pre-pandemic. We're back to that kind of reality by and large. Still some very real issues like retail theft that need to be dealt with. But big picture, the overwhelming issue is affordability. And I mean, I talked to every kind of New Yorker who are just feeling this so deeply, Errol, that they cannot figure out between rent or mortgage, groceries, childcare, how they can make this puzzle somehow fit. And I think what's happening now is a bigger challenge than we've ever seen before. The pandemic and the inflation after really contributed to that. And folks are looking for an answer. I think it's a change election. I think they're not looking for the status quo or anything that's going to take them back to what was, because it wasn't working for them. But overwhelmingly, you know, look, I'm very proud. We did pre-K for all and 3K. That put money back in people's pockets. It helped kids first and foremost, but also took a huge expense off of families. We did paid sick days. That helped people not have to miss their income if they were sick. We did a lot of affordable housing programs, things that were exactly about lowering and lessening that burden.
Sure.
And that's why, as the Independent Budget Office showed at the end of my administration, we actually reduced income inequality after 8 years. But now the crisis in some ways has deepened again.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, you also, you know, there was the rent freeze.
Yep.
You also raised the minimum wage. And all of those things are still in effect.
Yes.
And yet inflation or whatever else, the underlying cost of living, has exceeded even those. So the current mayor and the next mayor have fewer tools. I mean, you developed several different initiatives, but now what is the next mayor supposed to do?
Well, I'm going to argue, respect the point, but I'd say actually they have more tools on some levels too. First of all, unfortunately, and I'm not saying this with any joy, during the pandemic, the rich really got richer. So if you're talking about tax fairness, if you're talking about asking the wealthy to pay their fair share in taxes, they have done better than ever, and they're going to get a huge tax break right now, again, from Donald Trump. So in terms of New York City taxes, New York State taxes, it's perfectly fair to ask a little more to help address some of these problems. Also, the legislature in Albany. I had a Republican state senate for much of the time. We now have a Democratic state senate that I think is much more concerned about day-to-day life for everyday New Yorkers. We have a governor in Kathy Hochul, who I think is at least willing to work with New York City in a way Andrew Cuomo was not willing to during my administration. So, you know, I think the next mayor has some opportunities actually that might give them the ability to do some more or some different things than what we've been able to do before.
Yeah, we just ticked off a number of your different initiatives, and I remember actually having this conversation with you at this table towards the end of your first term, actually, that most of these things were already at least in motion.
Yeah.
And really, you know, in a measurable way, I know Juan Gonzalez wrote a whole book about it,
Yep.
put billions of dollars into the pockets of working New Yorkers. Now, The New York Times Editorial Board remembers this all a lot differently.
Yeah, I don't know what city they're talking about. Someone help me here.
Let me read you the money quote and get your response. The New York Times did a somewhat vague editorial where they said they don't like any of the candidates, but that the one thing they want people to do is not rank Mamdani. I think that's my takeaway. Anyway, one of the things they said that caught my eye, it says, and they're talking about you, Bill de Blasio, overall, he bears significant responsibility for the city's problems. He did not take disorders seriously enough, and he set back the city's K-12 school system. His main legacy is to have contributed to the city's recent decline. Shame on you, Bill de Blasio.
Yeah, Errol, I don't know what I was doing. These guys don't know what the hell they're talking about. I mean, I am so sick of the elitism and the out-of-touch reality of the Times. What city are they living in? I had Bill Bratton as my police commissioner at the beginning. We drove down crime 6 years in a row to levels we hadn't seen since the 1950s. Were they here for any of that? Then there was a global pandemic that unfortunately drove up crime in cities all over America. Give me a break. I care deeply about public safety and order. I was also trying to create reform and get rid of stop and frisk and bring police and community closer together. And we in many ways succeeded pre-pandemic. They also said at some point, we somehow education got worse. Well, no, we got pre-K for all, we got 3K, and our test scores went up. So it's an invalid editorial, but much worse than what they said about me is they're basically saying, vote for the corrupt guy, Andrew Cuomo, vote for the guy we said was corrupt and should resign because he's more the status quo, he's more reliable. Yes, he's reliably corrupt. He's reliably part of the problem that created the affordability crisis in New York City today. He never helped us on affordable housing. He never helped us on homelessness. He took care of his rich friends. So meanwhile, along comes, to their credit, Brad Lander, Adrian Adams, Zoran Mamdani, with, guess what, new ideas. And they say we could do something different. I'll use the case because they make this point in the editorial. They talk about free buses as some crazy Zoran notion, except for it's happening in various parts of the United States already.
Sure.
So they said the exact same thing about pre-K for all. They said when in the 2013 editorial, it was a pipe dream and it was unrealistic and that's why people shouldn't vote for me. I think a lot of people are going to look at that editorial and say, that is the voice of the wealthy and privileged few, but bears no resemblance to what's going on in New York City.
Well, when you say you think this is a change election, what is it that people want to change to? Is it systemic, or is it a bundle of policies, or is it a style? What needs to change?
I think the simple way of saying it is there has been, I think we saw it in 2024 nationally, there's been a rejection of status quo politics, status quo politicians, the notion that the policies that were attempted previously had a profound enough impact. And I'm putting this on Democrats too. I think God bless Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but they did not give people a sense that they were going to change enough quickly enough. So when you actually talk to a real New Yorker, not the New York Times Editorial Board, but regular people, and they talk to you about how hard it is to pay for their housing, they don't want to hear, oh, let's just rely on the policies of the past. They want to see something bold. I understand why people are talking about rent freeze.
Sure.
And it's you could debate it all you want, but what we know for sure is people can't afford to live here. We're losing the middle class, we're losing the working class, we're losing multi-generation New Yorkers. In that context, you cannot do the same old, same old.
Let me ask you about yesterday's arrest of the controller and candidate for mayor, Brad Lander. It echoed for a lot of us the moment in 2013 when you were arrested on the campaign trail. They were talking about the closing of Long Island College Hospital, which did subsequently close, or at least
Although, thank God, we kept an emergency room there.
Yeah, I was going to say significantly reconfigured, right?
Yeah.
Do you think the arrest is going to help Lander in these final days?
Look, I want to give Brad Lander credit. He's the kind of human being, he's substantive and serious. He doesn't just go and do something for the fun of being arrested. I think he was trying to make a point about the fact that immigration enforcement has become arbitrary and the rule of law is being degraded by Donald Trump and ICE. What we saw there was absolutely inappropriate. There's no reason to treat an elected official that way and someone who's peacefully protesting and raising a valid concern. I think New Yorkers will appreciate his courage. I think they'll appreciate his position. So I think it will be meaningful as people think about voting. It's nowhere near as important as who they think will help them afford this city, but I think it will be seen as something honorable and important.
Okay. Great to see you. If you do just change your mind about endorsements, you know where to come.
Right here.
Great to see you.
Right here.
You do it right here.
My spawning ground, right here.
Thanks a lot. All right. Thank you for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage, and click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.